I wanted to film a video today to take a look at the swag versus rooftop tent. It's quite an interesting topic and there's some positives and negatives of either one. So we'll look at sort of the pros and cons of both and maybe which one would suit your style of camping, four-wheel driving, touring, overlanding better. For this video, the swag I'll be using is the crash pad double swag. And then the rooftop tent is the Drifter Wildlands 1.2 rooftop tent, but they are just kind of the examples we're using for this video, but we're just going to look at the topic in a general sense. I'm not going to focus on specifics of one brand or the other. If you watched my videos before, you'd realize that I do a bloody lot of camping and four-wheel driving, meaning it is very important to me to use the best one for my trips away. And I have had a heap of experience using both as well. I used the swag for about 3 years on the road for some big trips, you know, month on the road, weeks on the road, and all our weekend trips. And then the rooftop tent I've had on my four-wheel drive for about 6 months now, and I've probably spent maybe 40-ish or so nights in it on the road, so not as much experience with it, but I've got a good idea of the pros and cons of it and how sort of each one would suit your needs. I'll obviously go into it in more detail in the video, but for me personally, quick summary, I prefer the rooftop tent for what I'm currently doing. It suits me better, but some people the swag is going to suit them better. First off, we're going to set them up, and then while I set them up, I'll run a timer of how long each one takes to set up. This is obviously going to differ a little bit from brand to brand, but you'll get the general idea. We'll do the rooftop tent first. 3, 2, 1, go. And stop. Rooftop tent done, came in at 59.79 seconds. Now we'll set up the swag. Keep in mind that the swag may take a little bit longer depending on where you keep it. I know a lot of people tie it on the roof, which may add a little bit of time. For this video here, we'll just pretend I keep it in the back of the ute. And here we go, we'll time the swag set up. 3, 2, 1, go. And there's the swag setup, came in at 2 minutes 40.08 seconds, meaning the swag was nearly 3 times as long. This is a hardtop rooftop tent. They are generally quicker to set up than the soft shell rooftop tents, which may take a bit longer. Now that we've got them both set up, we can start running through some pros and cons of each one. I actually wrote down some notes here on a book, that way I wouldn't forget everything. The first one, which is obvious, the swag here is on the ground. Rooftop tent up in the sky, air, up there, whatever you want to call it, up on top of the car. The first one being where the rooftop tent takes the win is you are away from snakes, spiders, lizards, various things that crawl around down on the ground, even crocodiles if you're camping up the top of Australia. Swag, you're right down there with them all. So safer up there against wildlife and all those little creatures. And then the second point with being up on the roof is you've got a consistent surface up here. You know what you're sleeping on. Down on the ground, if you've got grass or sand, great, that's super comfy. But a lot of the time we're camping on rocks or that really rough dirt. You know, you got little shrubs, trees on the ground. So that's where this becomes harder for you. I know on our most recent trip away we camped quite a few times on the edge of creeks on rocks. This was absolutely amazing. This, not so great. But to counteract that, a little point you can do is you can get a stretcher, which will bring you up off those rocks, off the ground, and create that more comfort. Another point to consider, being up there, you are more exposed to wind and the elements. For me, it hasn't been a problem. We've been up there in some super high winds. It didn't really worry me at all. It didn't disrupt my sleep or the night or anything. But down on the ground on the swag, you definitely are more protected from the wind. And then talking of weather in relation to rain, with the swag, what we normally do, I've got an awning over the other side, put the awning out and then put the swag under it. So that way you're protected from the rain. You can have it all open up and the rain's not landing on it. Whereas up this, you can't put an awning up on top of you up there in the sky. So this is gonna cop all the rain on it. And hasn't been an issue. They're very weatherproof. The rain doesn't come through it or anything, but it's just that that is all exposed to the rain directly, and you kind of have to close it up a fair bit. You can sort of leave the tops open. So that's probably going to be better there when it comes to rain. And this, if it's raining, you can pack that up under the awning out of the rain. That it's going to be raining on it while you're trying to pack it up. We've done that before. It kept it dry inside. It didn't let the water in, but I got wet. I got wet packing it up. With the rooftop tent, you have to consider and remember that you need to get your car on flat, level ground. Because if it's all sloped and leaning, then your rooftop tent's going to be sloped and leaning as well. Hasn't created too much of an issue for me. I just know I've had to put rocks under a certain wheel at a time to even that car out. Whereas the swag, you can sort of sit it around camp wherever you want on the even ground. But then the counteraction of that is if your whole camp's sloped, you can put a couple of rocks under your wheels and get your car even. But you can't put a couple of rocks under your swag and get your swag even. So you can create the more even ground for this under certain circumstances. When it comes to camping in both of these, you have to remember that if you're someone that likes to set up a base camp and go for a drive, a swag's going to be better. A swag you can leave on the ground set up. You can't drive around on the tracks with your rooftop tent still set up on top of your four-wheel drive. So you need to pack down and pack it down if you're going for a drive, and then set it back up when you get to camp. So you can't really leave that base camp. If you're moving camps day to day, doesn't matter. But if you're staying a spot for a week, well, you might want to consider that. But as we saw before, in this particular model, comes in just under a minute. So it's not really a major disruption. Let's have a look at getting in and out of the swag and rooftop tent. Well, getting in and out of a swag is a fair bit easier, particularly during the night if you need to go to the toilet or if you're going to bed after a few drinks. That's quite easy to get in and out of. With the rooftop tent, you have to climb up in and out of it. Now for me, I don't use the ladder because I climb in and out of it from the back of my ute. So I can hop in this way, it's not too bad. But a lot of people are going to have to use a ladder on the side of their four-wheel drive. So it depends if you need to get up during the night, if you like climbing up and down a ladder, or how safe you feel doing that. Now when it comes to taking these away, it can be a good and bad thing of the rooftop tent. If you leave it permanently mounted on your car, well, it's there ready to go all the time. You don't need to pack anything up at all, it's there. But then as a day-to-day driver, you're going to have a rooftop tent on your car all the time. So do you want that extra weight, that extra wind noise up there on a day-to-day basis when you aren't camping? I drive around with this on my car all the time. At first, yeah, there was more wind noise, but honestly I forgot about it after a while. Now the benefit of the swag there is you can just chuck it on your roof, tie it down, or chuck it in the back, whatever, when you're going away, easily take it out when you get home. That's very different to trying to get one of these off, which is quite the task. This one isn't too bad because it's only about 50-ish kilos and it's only like 8 screws under there you undo. You're going to need a couple of people to lift it off. It's obviously going to be a lot more work than the swag. So you have to consider, if you're considering rooftop tent versus swag, whether you're going to leave this on your car all the time or take it off with that bit of effort, that bit of painfulness, or if you're just going to quickly chuck a swag in and out of your car. The big one with these is price. This swag about $550. This rooftop tent, $2,500. You're looking at nearly 5 times the price for the rooftop tent. So how much money do you want to spend on your camping equipment? If you're going all the time, maybe you want to spend more money and get the comforts of a rooftop tent, but if you're only going time to time, then maybe you want to spend less money on a swag. But as I've said, I've slept on the road in the swag for a month at a time. Wasn't an issue. Alright, let's look at comfort. Swag mattresses normally come in around 50 or 70 mil, which is not too bad, but they may be lacking that bit of comfort for people. When it comes to height, I can't even really sit up in it without my head squishing. So you don't have much room in there other than just for laying down. Now compare that to the rooftop tent. As you can see, I can comfortably sit and I still got room there. I can move around in it a whole lot more, meaning there is more room in the rooftop tent. It's more of a square structure there as well. When it comes to mattress comfort, this is a much more comfy mattress. I have upgraded this to 100 mil, which I probably could do in the swag as well. But as a general rule of thumb, rooftop tents are gonna have a more comfortable mattress than the swag. I've been in rooftop tents before that have had like 150 mil, 200 mil mattresses. It nearly feels like your bed at home. So it depends how important mattress comfort is for you. When it comes to width, that's gonna come down to your brand of swag and rooftop tent. The swag is slightly wider than this because this is a small 1.2 slimline. But I've slept in here with 2 adults plenty of times. There's enough room, same as a swag. 2 adults, both work well. When it comes to ventilation, it's probably not much difference. I think they're both really good. This has 3 big wide open points. When it comes to being on the road in bad weather conditions with both of these, I think they're similar. After 2 or 3 nights using a swag in the rain, things are starting to get wet. You really need some sunshine to start drying it out. Similar with the rooftop tent. You can sort of pack them up 2 or 3 days, nights in a row in the rain, bad weather. After that, they're both the same. You really need to get some sunshine and get things drying out. You just start to get that moisture and wetness through your mattress, through your bedding. When it comes to tough tracks, hard forward driving, more weight up on the roof means more leans on harder tracks and on your angles. It's not as safe as the swag. These weigh in at 51 or 52 kilos, whereas the swag is probably about 25-ish kilos once I got my bedding in that there and I tie it up on the roofs, talking nearly double the weight. I've done some tough tracks in it and I haven't really noticed the difference, but I know a lot of people that do have rooftop tents say they did notice the difference. So if you're doing lots of harder four-wheel driving, you're going to have to keep that in mind, that it may hinder you a little bit. One thing that I personally love is the views you get from this rooftop tent. Bloody amazing. Set up there overlooking a beach or a lookout or something, you can just see so much. Whereas down on the ground you can't see as much. So I've found that some spots I'll just wake up of a morning, you'll be just sitting up in there watching the sunrise, and it's an awesome place to do it from. Alright, I've tried to cover some of the main points there of the pros and cons of each one. Now what I did is I put a questionnaire up on my Instagram of anyone that would like questions answered about these. So I'm going to run through a few of those questions now. Now the first question, which quite a few people asked, was, I'll phrase it as nighttime adult activities. Which one is better for those? Doesn't really matter. This one, the car's going to move around a little bit. Not a problem. There is more room in that. Down in the swag it is more stable, but there's less room in the swag. So take your pick. There's a lot of questions here about having to pack it up every time you go for a drive and you can't leave it as a base camp. As I said, if you're someone that likes to leave a base camp, that's where you may consider the swag. For me, I don't. I'm moving basically every day when we're away four-wheel driving and touring, and it's only about that 1.5 minutes maybe. If you're going slower, you got to pull some bedding out of there too, so it depends how much that's going to annoy you. The other thing there is if you're at a camp spot and you pack up everything and drive away for the day, yeah, you might have to leave some chairs or something there so people know you are actually camping there. Questions about fuel, more usage of having the rooftop tent up there permanently. Honestly, I don't know because I don't keep an eye on fuel, but I assume you would get a little bit more fuel usage with having the tent and weight up there. Do you think a swag on a stretcher would be just as good as the rooftop tent? A stretcher with the swag is definitely going to help with some of those issues, like bring you up off the ground a bit away from snakes and spiders, bring you up off the rocks, and if there's water pooled down there. For me personally, I don't think it's quite as good as the rooftop tent, but Dad uses a stretcher on a swag under an awning and it's bloody good. Now, a question here which I forgot to mention is roof rack space. Obviously, once you put the rooftop tent up there, you lose your roof rack space. Now, this one does come with racks up on top of it as well, so you can still tie stuff up on the racks, but it's not as easy as tying it straight on the roof. So I did used to keep my chainsaw and max tracks up there as well. Now I just chuck them in the back. Honestly, it's not a major deal, but you do have to consider that you may lose your roof rack space. Or with a ute, you could build a tub rack and put it in the back and then still keep your roof rack space as well. But with the swag, you can just tie it up on your roof rack and still have room up there for other things too. A couple of questions here about safety and security. That's where the rooftop tent I think wins versus being up there nice and safe compared to being down on the ground. A few questions here about full-time touring against the odd weekend camping trip here and there. Odd weekend camping trip here and there, personally I'd go swag, but if you're someone who goes away a lot and on bigger trips like me, I'd go rooftop tent. Damage to rooftop tent on the tracks being up on the roof. I keep my swag up on the roof too when I use that. Honestly, I've flogged both of them through numerous trees and branches and vines and everything else, and I haven't damaged either one of them yet. We've covered quite a few points there of the rooftop tent versus swag. For me personally, after using them both, I prefer the rooftop tent. The reasons being I'm always away four-wheel driving and camping. It's up there ready to go all the time. I love that I can pull up on a creek or on the rocks on sort of crappy ground and have a nice comfy bed up there. The setup, pack up time is about 3 times as quick when I'm setting up and packing up every day. It's more comfortable and there's more room up there. I love the views you get from up there. For me personally, I'm going to be sticking with the rooftop tent for a while. It seems to sort of suit most conditions better for me, and the trade-offs of what you lose compared to a swag, the benefits far outweigh the negatives in the rooftop tent. But I think a big point to consider is how much you go four-wheel driving and camping, keeping in mind that's 5 times the price. So if you're just going here and there, I honestly wouldn't do it. I'd get a swag. But if you're someone who's going regularly all the time, you love camping and four-wheel driving, that's your thing, a rooftop tent is definitely to consider. But when you're looking at rooftop tents, try and keep that weight down. This is around 50 kilos. Try and get those lightweight ones, and try and get those ones that are quick setup and pack up time. You don't want some massive 80 kilo rooftop tent up there. It's going to be too much. What I did on Instagram is I sent out a message and asked a few people to share with me if they've experienced both, which one they prefer and why. Because I prefer this rooftop tent, but obviously some people are going to prefer the swag. My opinion isn't the right one. It's just what I currently think in relation to these two, but I'm not dissing the swag in any way. I love the swag too, and I've spent months on the road in that thing, and I'd happily do it again. But if I'm going camping and I'm saying to myself, do I want to take the swag or do I want to take the rooftop tent? At the moment, guaranteed, gonna choose the rooftop tent. First response we have here from Xavier. One of the best things for me going to a rooftop tent is in bad weather, you can use the full space of your awning for cooking, hanging out, instead of trying to stumble around a double swag that takes up the whole space. Response here from Jason. I think the main thing is how many times a year you'd camp. If you go a lot, like yourself, rooftop tent could be the go. Swag is just as fast pending what swag you use. I'm in the Oz tent bunker. But you also have options not having to pack down the car if you need to go somewhere and come back. Another reason is living in Sydney, I can still get through all the height clearances. One here from Rob. Camped in tents, swags, King's rooftop tent, and once you get off the ground, you'll never go back. The Bundu, is it? The Bundy electric is a 12-second setup. You don't have to worry about setting up, packing up, just how quickly you can get a stubby from the Waco. One here from Gus. Hey mate, I have a Dashi Panorama rooftop tent and I also have a Ranger Supply Co double swag. I usually base my decision on the weather as to which one I'll use. If it's freezing cold, the swag. If warm/hot, the rooftop tent. I found the swag was heaps easier to stay warm in over the rooftop tent. That's my biggest pro/con of the two. One here from Ben. So I prefer swags mainly because you can set up a base camp so you don't have to keep setting up and packing up your tent every time you want to go for a drive. Great for places like LCMP, Land Cruiser Mountain Park that is, and beach camping if you are staying in the same place for a few nights. I also find a lot more stable as when I get in and out of the rooftop tent I can feel the car rocking, and I'm a bigger guy so even when I'm moving around at night it rocks as well. Another one here, swag versus rooftop. Definitely enjoy the simplicity of a rollout swag. No poles to set up and pack up, plus can literally fall into bed and sleep next to the fire. But you cannot beat the comfort and peace of mind that the rooftop brings. Way off the ground, away from unwelcome critters and potentially water. Also, the new rooftops being set up with a flick of 3 or 4 latches, you can't beat it for setup time and ease. One here from Sam. Rooftop I found to be too heavy and lean the car over a lot more on harder tracks. Swag you can set up and leave to come back to. Comfort wise, as much. Once had a crazy lightning storm in our rooftop and didn't have any dramas weather wise in the rooftop, but friends swags and tents drenched from the groundwater. Hopefully that gives you a few ideas if you are looking at buying a rooftop tent or a swag, maybe which one's going to be more suited for you and the pros and cons of each. I'm sure there's more great ideas and points and reasons out there behind each one. So maybe if you got something good you want to share, write it down in the comments below, because I don't know everything. So share it down below, and then if you're watching this video, have a read through the comments as well, see what other people out there think too. All packed up. One last thing there that I was just thinking I was packing up is once you're packed up, which I used to annoy me, because once you get swag packed up, then you got to launch it up onto your roof and get up actually on your roof and tie it down and everything, which was always a hassle. I tell you what, when you camp every day for weeks at a time, it's much easier packing up and setting up the rooftop tent than the swag on and off the roof. And one last thing which I forgot to address was both these products were given to me for free, and I continue to work with both these companies, so this wasn't meant to be in favor of one company or brand than the other. It's just a general look at the pros and cons. Someone asked me if I had had to pay for the rooftop tent, would have I still done it? At the time, probably not, but now that I've actually experienced it and been happy with how much I like it, I'd be willing to fork out the money for the rooftop tent over the swag.